guys can just walk.
I think we have to find it. Okay, I'm
All right.
okay. You wanna? Okay. I love it.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for sticking around for this panel. It's an important one because the people up on stage right now are doing very important work, and they're trying really hard to get the support of venture capital in Silicon Valley. And they're also working with government. So before we get started, though, I want to start with Frederick and go down the line and just tell us the connections, the personal connections you have to your companies.
Cool. My name is Frederick Hudson. I'm the CEO and founder of Pigeonly. And basically what we've built is a platform that makes it possible for people to search, find, and connect with their loved ones in prison. And the idea started with my personal experience, served close to 5 years in federal prison for distribution of marijuana. And while I was there, I saw there's this huge population of people that no one's paying attention to, and it's very difficult and expensive to stay connected. And you know, when I was released, I got with my co-founder. I said, you know, technology is more than a place to solve this, and here we are today.
Yeah.
My name is Neil Shaw. I'm the CEO of Concern. We are a compassionate alternative to 911 for people experiencing mental health crises, homelessness, and substance abuse issues here in San Francisco. And my personal connections, by the time I was 28, I was arrested 7 times and spent time in jail. I wish I knew about you 4 years ago. And I've experienced my own mental health issues. And also, when I was a very young boy, we 5150'd my father on a psychiatric hold. He had a mental health breakdown. So it's personal for me, and I think I just can't see what goes on in this city if you walk around this city, people languishing on these streets anymore.
My name is Phaedra Ellis-Lampkins. I'm the co-founder of a company called Promise. We're an alternative to incarceration, so we work with governments to get people out of jail who are bail eligible but can't afford to get out. I co-founded the company after losing someone I loved dearly to addiction and spent some time trying to understand why we hadn't built a system that was care-based and treated people instead of punishing them.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rose Afrier. Huge thank you to TechCrunch for inviting us. I am the co-founder and executive director of the nonprofit organization mRelief, and we are addressing the problem of billions of dollars in unclaimed food stamp benefits in America each year. This is also a very personal issue for me. I am the product of public assistance programs, born and raised in New York, in the public housing projects, and also a food program made it possible for my mother to spend less money on food and more resources towards her nursing degree. And she's been a nurse now for more than 25 years, and in that way, it helped unlock not just food for my family, but economic opportunity. And so for us, we've now unlocked more than $44 million in food stamp benefits through an easy-to-use platform on web, text messaging, and voice that helps people enroll end-to-end in food stamps with dignity.
Thank you all. Can I get a round of applause for them just before we get going? Rose, I want to start with you. You talked about the billions of dollars of food stamps left on the table. I remember being a kid, 8 years old in 1980, taking a food stamp booklet to the grocery store and having people kind of watch me, but I didn't understand it. So you've talked about stigma. Being a barrier to people even trying to access those benefits. Can you talk a little bit about the connection of stigma and the role it plays in mRelief?
Absolutely. So a lot of what our platform is about is making it super easy for you to discover whether or not you're even likely eligible. A lot of people think because of the stigma that you have to be absolutely destitute. And indeed, when the food stamp program was first started in the US, you actually were, it really was for very, very poor people. And so we really go to where people are in the age of the digital era. So we're integrated. I know Neil mentioned being right here in San Francisco. We're integrated in every public library desktop right here in the county County of San Francisco. We're also in Facebook feeds. We're searchable on Google and Bing. And so a lot of what that does is it allows people to have a private way for them to find out whether or not they're eligible. And then we hold their hand through every step of the way. We follow up with the office. We also make sure that low-income families have a free ride to the office to go and get their benefit in hand in under 48 hours.
Wow.
Yes. So the MRelief has the technology, and you're dealing with probably legacy systems too. And Phaedra, you work with counties in California so far. In how many states?
We have 3 states we work with in addition to California.
Okay, and so the problem with working with government, there's probably many problems working with government, but they're legacy technology systems, right? And then the government should be taking care of all of these problems. So what has been has there been a barrier to entry of working with the counties, or are they excited to work with you?
I think people are excited because we haven't entered any place where people didn't realize the current system isn't working. What it tends to be is sometimes we find players who are invested in the current system who don't want change. I might run a jail and I don't want to get everyone out because that's kind of my fiefdom. And so I don't want it to actually decrease the number of folks. And so I'm like, who are you releasing? Like we've had a couple of pretty fascinating meetings. But I think what's interesting is that in a lot of places, government has figured out how to make things work, because we see people on everything from FileMaker Pro to Microsoft Access. And so I think the real opportunity for all of us is to be able to integrate those technologies and to be able to do things like data and analytics and to be able to provide feedback. But it's definitely, I think, a part of all of our companies is understanding kind of forward deployment.
Right. Well, when you come to them as a technology company with trying really to affect change with bail reform, are they skeptical? Do they want that problem changed, or do they want to try to change it themselves?
I think people come to us for different reasons, right? So one state that we're working with, they're really focused on the opioid crisis. And because of the opioid crisis, their jails are now filled. And so they're in a place where almost 90% of the people in their jails are pre-trial. And so they haven't been convicted of the crime they were arrested for, and it's largely addiction and mental health issues. Right. So I think what they're trying to figure out is whatever we're doing isn't working. Can you help us figure out what does it work? So I think it's one piece bail reform, but really ultimately, what are the strategies that actually work to stop someone from coming back to jail? And we think it's employment and support and addiction support. And so I think being able to learn things like, does anger management work for domestic violence? We think it may not work. Right. Do you measure risk by how many interactions with police? Probably not, because we know you're most likely to have an interaction with a cop if you're poor and black or brown, right? So figuring out both what are the biases and what are the things that actually work and stopping someone from going back to jail. I think so. We get some folks around bail reform, but we get many more people who are just like, how do I build a smarter system that's less biased or more effective and/or?
Well, and that segues in with Neil and the work that Concern does, right? Because people can walk down the street and instead of calling 911, which 70% of the calls of 911 is mental health.
In San Francisco, 80% of calls to 911 are related to mental health. And what we allow people to do essentially is activate their empathy. So you're walking down Market Street, or I'm sure some of these people at this conference from out of town turn onto the corner from Howard onto 6th Street, and they go like wide-eyed emoji, because if you walk down 6th Street, you'll know what I'm talking about. We allow people to pull out their phones, submit a mobile crisis report, just like you would order a Lyft, except you'd order compassionate crisis response team. People that are trained from the community to de-escalate the situation, and we train them in our model of compassionate response. And then instead of police getting out there, or worse, doing nothing for our folks, you're, as a citizen or as a non-citizen, anybody can use the app, you're allowing yourself to activate your community to help people get the help they need and linkages to care rather than jails and hospitals. And the thing from the public sector people don't understand all the time is I think the conversation is around a lot around not having police show up, because we know that the negative repercussions of showing up with a gun and a badge to somebody in a mental health crisis. The other side of that is a lot of the times police are taking people to SF General, Psych Emergency, which has 20 beds. And we've got people going there on 5150 holds, getting released after 24 hours, and they're right back on the street. And if you get released on Potrero Avenue, I can tell you from personal experience, you are going to try and get your next fix. You have no linkage to care when you get booted out of the psych emergency room. And it's the same 3 to 5% of people on our streets that are accounting for 80% of those costs. So we definitely have a public health and a public safety crisis. And to speak to what you were saying is, right now we're in the process of piloting a collaboration with the Chief Bill Scott, with SFPD. And hopefully in early 2019, we'll have a collaboration where the Tenderloin Police Department, which is where half of the homeless population exists in San Francisco, will be using the Concern app instead of going through the process they go through, arrest or taking people to jail. We already have cops using the app. We've had over 100 reports from cops themselves. It's just not part of their official protocol. And we're going to also try and triangulate with the medical director at Psych Emergency at General, so that we don't have people cycling through those 3 systems. And we can catch them at intercept 0, right? It's the actual official term. It's intercept 0 when the person's in crisis before they go through the criminal justice system or the public health system.
All right. Well, let's turn to funding, too, because when we talked, you were talking about the fact that the police are using it, and maybe the chief of police wasn't excited about using it, that some of his cops were using it. Are you getting any funding to help promote the wider spread use of this app from not only private citizens like myself, but cops, medical, et cetera?
So the interesting thing is, I think Concern is unique, at least on the panel, that we're a tech nonprofit. So we're not a for-profit company. We are getting funding from a couple arms of the tech companies, Google.org, Twilio.org. We use Twilio to power all our SMS dispatch, and our new app that we're testing right now, that we're releasing soon, will have a Twilio Studio chatbot to automate dispatch. That's just the tech side. We do have a small grant from Kaiser Permanente. Now we are doing our first training this Saturday, actually. We're going to be training homeless peers to do behavioral health outreach and crisis intervention. So right now, the City of San Francisco, Department of Supportive Homelessness, Department of Public Health, their response is usually, if it's a peer response, which all our responders are, it's somebody with previous lived experience. My definition of a peer, being a person in recovery myself, is that we need to include, if we're going to talk about tech and design thinking and all that stuff, we need to include people on the street experiencing homelessness as part of the solution to the problem. So we're going to be training people that are currently experiencing homelessness and their own behavioral health issues to go out on the streets and do escorts and navigations for other people in crisis. To answer your question about funding, fuck. Oh my God. We're struggling. I mean, we are a bootstrapped tech nonprofit. And yes, we're building a public profile, but the funding rarely ever matches the growth of the operations and the need, right? And the major gap in what we're doing. Yeah. So looking at you, folks. Yeah.
Speaking in funding with Frederick, so over the course of 6 years, you've raised $5 million?
Yeah, 5 years. So we raised a little over $5 million so far.
What was that process like? Did you get a lot of no's before you got a yes?
Yeah, of course. You always get more no's.
Talk to us about your no's.
So you got to remember, when we raised our first seed round, I had only been out of prison for 12 months, right? So not only did I not fit the typical profile that a VC is looking at or an technology investor is looking at, but they also had to deal with the fact that, well, this guy just got out of prison and, he's asking for $1 million, right, to do this thing to solve this problem that I don't even understand. Nobody that I know has been to prison before. I didn't even know this was a problem. I didn't even know people was paying $15 to talk on the phone for 15 minutes.
$15 for a 15-minute phone call.
Right. So because it was so different, and people that we spoke to didn't have anything to benchmark us to as far as the problem that we were solving and why it needed to be solved. It was just a struggle. I mean, we talked to probably 60 people, and out of the 60 people, we had maybe 5 or 6 people invest, which is normal. I think that's probably typical. But it was really just, what I learned is that I had to quickly identify people who didn't get it and get them out the way sooner than later, or else you spend so much time spinning your wheels on investors that are not interested or just don't get it, right? So what I learned very early on is to identify the people who got it and understood it and invest my time there versus trying to convince people across that line. And that's how it was. So, and then after that first seed round, at that point, we had a lot more credibility. We started to deliver on the stuff that we said that we would. And then from there, it was really just always about over-delivering everything that we said that we would. And then we was always able to successfully raise more money. And, now to the point we are now, we're profitable. And we're looking to the next big stage of what we want to reach. So, that was our fundraising experience.
So you're still raising right now for more growth.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
What does that growth look like to you?
What is that what?
What does that growth look like to you?
So for us I think the big thing that I see now is, we spent the first few years, building out the product. We spent a lot of time designing it to work with every single federal, county, and state prison in the U.S. So our database has over 17,000 facilities in it, and each one has its own unique rules. Each one has its unique setup. So it's very time intensive. It's basically, echoing what Phaedra was just talking about, is that every place works a little bit different. They're not all exactly the same, right? And they all use different technologies, and there's no cookie cutter approach. So we spent a lot of our time there. But once we did that and we solved the communication, where our platform now, we connect people over in 88 different countries, all communicating with someone here in the States. We do, a little over 2 million phone minutes a month. We ship 4,000 prints a day all over the U.S. So we nailed that product for the communication side, but then we realized there's a big disconnect with the criminal justice data side in general. So what we found was that in order for our product to work, we had to know who was in prison, where were they in prison. We needed to know what's the rules at the facility for what can come in the mail, what can't come in the mail. We need to know what phone providers are at that facility. We need to know what are the rates for those phone providers. So there was just a lot of data that goes into even just making our product work. And then we realized that there's a lot of people that could innovate in the criminal justice system, but they can't because they don't have access to that data. So what we started to focus our attention to now is basically organizing all criminal justice data so we can see simple things of who's in jail, when they're in jail, what's their bail amounts, what was their crimes, what does their demographics look like, what's their race, age, sex, et cetera. And so that other companies can build other interesting products and services that can address all sorts of problems within the criminal justice system beyond just communication. For example, a big opportunity is background checks. So background checks is a mess, right? So over 2/3 of companies do background checks.
Right.
The problem with background checks is that it only shows that you was arrested. It doesn't show that maybe you was arrested and the charges were dropped. It doesn't show that you was arrested and maybe that arrest happened 15 years ago. So when I apply for a job, it just says I was arrested. The problem is over 13 million people are arrested every year, right? So it's very large group of people that experience this. And because background checks is so inefficient with the data that it shows, it doesn't provide the employer any context, right? So that's just one small area. That's a huge industry that no innovation can happen in that until someone fixes the criminal justice data problem. Right. So that we're reporting the right things the right way with the proper context around it.
Sounds like you could do a partnership with Promise at some point.
Yeah.
We talked.
Yeah.
Phaedra, kind of going off of the accelerator, you did an accelerator, right, Frederick?
Yes.
Phaedra, you went through Y Combinator?
I did. I went through Y Combinator.
Talk to us about the difference between the accelerator process and the one-on-one meeting process. What was that like for you?
And the one-on-one what?
The one-on-one meeting process when you meet a venture capital just like in person versus the accelerator.
Yeah, so my problem is I raised all my money before demo day.
Okay.
So, which now if I were doing it over, I might do it a little differently. So what Y Combinator was funny to me because when we went to do the first interview, which was just in January of this year, was like we were clearly like the only women, people of color, and it was kind of hysterical because like I drove up in my minivan, my co-founder's a lawyer, criminal defense lawyer, and she came in like flower jeans and Birkenstocks, and we walk in, and all these like young dudes are like, "Where's your product? How many users do you have?" And we're like, "So we have this idea." So Y Combinator was somewhat entertaining for us, but also very helpful. So Y Combinator was great. Michael and Gustav, who are partners, were really helpful. And I think because we had kids and we really cared, we felt passionate. So like I said, I'm going to raise at this valuation. And Michael's like, no way. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And he's like, okay, go bring me 3 investors. So I was like, okay, And then I came back and I was like, I got 3 investors at that valuation. And he was like, okay, so keep going. And and we raised probably within a week.
Sweet.
Wow. And so it was I didn't have kind of a difficult experience in terms of raising. I had a couple of people who were just jerks.
Was it because of the topic? Was it because of you? Was it because of the way the meetings went? We don't know why they were jerks, but
yeah, no,
what do you think?
I think it was probably I think there was an arrogance of like, you pitch me. And a couple people asked for a meeting, and at the beginning, I was like, I didn't have a deck. I was like, someone's like, and I was like, okay, here's what we're doing. And then as we got a deck, and then I just think I think for a lot of people who don't come out of tech, I didn't come out of tech. I'd been running revenue for a couple of years at another tech company, but I think we don't speak the same language, and I think sometimes venture capital is very focused at pattern recognition. And so you come in and you look like a different pattern, and like we didn't have a technical co-founder. We didn't want to be in San Francisco. I wasn't 15 and I wanted to make a living wage, and we wanted to hire people who weren't 12. We wanted government to be our client. We thought that we could build a product we didn't want to charge people. We thought electronic monitoring was bad. We had all of these perspectives that I think from a business sense also people didn't understand.
Right.
And I think we were grown up enough that when someone said something, we were just like, you're probably not our people. And I think that people aren't used to.
Right.
And people were just arrogant and rude and dismissive. And then if it was, I just said, I don't think we're probably a good fit, so we should stop meeting.
For sure.
And I had that about 4 or 5 times, and then we raised. And then people...
You have momentum now, probably, because of the raise a few months ago, right? You have some momentum going right now.
Yeah, we raised $4 million relatively quickly. And so I think I was concerned, like as a black woman, I said, this is going to be really hard to raise money. I prepped myself. I was like mentally in it. And then I think I had run revenue before, and I think that gives you, and the investors and a lot of the investors in Promise were investors in the last company I ran revenue at. So I think if people think, oh, you can make money, they're a little less likely to kind of have other issues. And so that was really good. And then the one thing I would say I wish I had known is I wish I had known that having investors who believe in you and your vision and values are more important than brand names. Because I think in the beginning I was like, I need to go get brand names so I am validated that we are this kind of person. And now I'm like, I could raise from whoever their name is, whoever is going to create the space for the vision I have for my company.
Yeah, good. We have just a minute and a half left, but I want to, Rose, one of the things that strikes me is people, and Phaedra, you just kind of alluded to it, is kind of not understanding the need. So I don't think people think about the fact that people who need food stamps don't have 60 minutes on their phones to sit on hold. And so what is the conversation like when you're trying to explain this to an investor?
So I would say that a lot of the issues circle around the idea that there is still a huge number of people in the US who do not have access to the internet. So if you make underneath $30,000 a year, about a third of people don't have regular access to a smartphone, and that doesn't even count people who run out of data each month. And so that has been a huge challenge for us. But I think we have this product differentiation. We also build on Twilio, and for every $51 you donate to MRelief, we can unlock $22.80 for a family. And if it's a senior, that's more than $6,000 over 3 years. And so it's worth it to donate into us because we really make that capital work for families and unlock food for them. And we've had a really great start. We've raised so far $1.1 million towards our current round of $2.6 million. And so we really encourage people to visit us at www.mrelief.com.
Thank you. Any last thoughts? We have investors probably in the audience. Do you have anything you want to say?
Give us some money? No, I'll just say we're looking for philanthropic capital, right? So we have an earned revenue model. We're releasing a new product that will hopefully be a SaaS product and data analytics. But for us, it's important not just, we went through a tech accelerator as well, fast forward, but it was tech nonprofit, right? And so And talking to Demo Day, the day before Demo Day, I found out my father got admitted to the hospital for addiction issues. And so it was tough for me to go in front of like a group of people like this and ask for money when my mind's somewhere else. And then he passed away 3 months later in December. So I didn't really get to post-Accelerated, get to go with that push. Yeah. So this year has been a really big year for Concern because we've got a new board that's just amazing. I mean, real ballers, real big players in the public health and public safety space and criminal justice as well. We are looking for people to invest in us to grow this because this problem, homelessness, mental health, substance abuse, is not endemic to San Francisco. It's already happening in Oakland. It's already happening in other parts of the Bay Area. And we've got this as a national problem. And so we want to take it on, and we're up for the challenge. We just want people to join us in that mission.
Thanks, Neil. Thank you, everybody. Ooh. Give them money.
Thank you.